Hello, my name is James D'Souza and I'm the host of Self-Awareness is Your Secret Weapon. Before we get into episode 4, which is about the theme responsibility, I want to mention the Mind Journal. They're available at mindjournals.com, and what they are is a journal specifically designed for men to develop a journaling practice. I think they're brilliant. I write in it every day, and it's helped me restore my emotional kind of level, restore my emotional balance, and also help me learn about how I can articulate my emotions much more clearly so that I do stay on an even keel. I highly recommend them. They're not paying me any commission just yet, but you can get one at mindjournals.com. Today, responsibility is the theme. And I asked the question, how do I take responsibility for my life? Very big question, because responsibility means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'm going to start off by talking about what responsibility could mean, kind of defining what responsibility means, and then some things that people have said about responsibility, and then some ways that you could start applying it in your life right now, and some specific examples from my own life. So let's look at the meaning of the word responsibility. So much of the time, I think you can split it in two. There's the kind of traditional associative, traditional things that we think of with the word responsibility. And then there's what people have said about it, which is a bit more empowering and interesting and maybe forward looking. So traditionally, responsibility can often mean having to do something, having to take action. Even that phrase, have to, should, must, ought to, that kind of burdensome, negative association with the word responsibility. I am responsible. There's a certain heaviness that goes with that word. And I think that's the traditional way of thinking about responsibility. I have to do something. I am responsible for getting my work done. I am responsible for my marriage working. I am responsible for eating well. I almost feel the heaviness as I say it. Maybe you can hear it in my voice. That's the traditional association with responsibility. But there are other ways of thinking about responsibility, and I'm going to talk about two of my favorites. The first is from Stephen Covey's classic book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the second is from a book I read more recently, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Now, of course, when Viktor Frankl talks about man's search for meaning, he means humanity's search for meaning. So I'm going to talk about those two books, and I'll put a link to those books, which I both highly recommend, in the show notes. So first up, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This was a book I read over 20 years ago, and it's probably the book that started me on my self-development journey. And it's really good. And I say it's a classic. I sometimes think it's associated a lot with the world of business, when I really think it's a book that's useful for everybody. And he talks about responsibility very specifically. He says that responsibility can be split into 2 bits: response able. And he says that the ability to respond is what responsibility is. And he separates those two things. He also separates what's actually happening out there in the world, the circumstances, and our response to those circumstances. And he separates those two things and he says, circumstances are going on, and then there's our response. But in the middle, we have self-awareness. We have a choice. We have our ability to choose. So things are happening. We then have our ability to choose and think, and then there's our response. That goes to the core of what Stephen Covey says responsibility is. Responsibility is our ability to choose our response to a situation. So that completely revolutionized my thinking, because when I came across this idea when I was 21, I felt like I was a victim of my circumstances, of my life. I was such a drama queen. I am a drama queen. The difference is now I know I'm being dramatic and I can catch it. And then I realize I have a choice. I'm responsible for how I respond to what's happening. When I was 21, I thought that's how life was. Everything was a massive deal. Everything was tragic for me. That's how I lived my life at 21. A big Shakespearean tragedy is how I would describe my life. Oh, you don't understand, this happened, and then that happened in my family, and blah. Everything was a huge drama. Fast forward now, I've been, ever since I heard that idea, the idea from Stephen Covey's book, realizing I have a choice about how I respond to circumstances, changed everything. So ever since then, it's been, okay, I have a choice about how I respond to circumstances. Something has happened. It might be very dramatic. And sometimes I feel like, oh my God, it's horrible, blah, blah, blah. What am I going to do? Oh my gosh. And I have a choice. I can either respond to it this way or that way, or this way or that way. There's a range of responses I can bring to it. So let me give you a specific example. Recently, last week, I was in a sulk and I posted a video about this on my Instagram, which you're welcome to follow, at James D'Souza 76. And the video was about sulking, and it was about holding on to a negative opinion. I was being very negative about everything that my wife was doing. I was finding fault in everything she was saying and doing. And then I wasn't really saying anything about it. But at the same time, I was kind of letting her know on the down low that I was annoyed. So it was kind of this passive aggressive nightmare. She thought I was annoyed. I said I wasn't, but actually I was. So I was unwilling to be responsible for what was going on with me. So I was sulking. And whatever my wife did was frustrating and irritating. I then realized at some point that I had a choice. I could either continue behaving this way and creating a really negative environment at home and really undermining my marriage, or I had a choice to be responsible for what was going on with me, communicate it in a way, apologize, and move forward. That is what I eventually did. And of course, when I apologized, everything disappeared and the environment, the whole experience relaxed. I relaxed, my wife relaxed. But it started from me being willing to be responsible for my own sulk and realizing that I had a choice about my behavior. So Stephen Covey's idea, we are response able. We are able to choose how we respond to circumstances. Ultimately, that's what he talks about. Habit one of the seven habits, according to Stephen Covey, is be proactive. And what he means by that is realize that you have a choice about your life. You have a choice about how you respond to the circumstances every moment. And that can be challenging, really challenging. And I'll come back to how challenging it is when I start giving some more examples. The second thing I want to talk about is Viktor Frankl's book. Again, amazing book, Man's Search for Meaning. This was written after the Second World War. Viktor Frankl was a survivor of Auschwitz, and he wrote about his experience. He was a psychotherapist, psychologist, and very interested in the raw humanity, the raw human experience of being in a Nazi concentration camp. And one of the things that he talks about is that having the experience of being responsible for your own life in the most horrific circumstances. And he suggests that the drive for meaning is more important than anything, and that the meaning of our lives is created by us, and that we have a choice about the meaning that we create for our lives. So there's a quote from the book that I really like, and I've written it down because it is a bit of a head turner. So I'm going to read it once. I'm probably going to read it a couple of times. So, in fact, I will read it a couple of times. Here's the quote from the book. It's what Viktor Frankl says: live as if you were living for the second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you are about to act now. Again, live as if you were living for the second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you are about to act now. It still swirls my head thinking about that. But what I take from that is my life is down to me, nobody else. My life, whatever the circumstances, is down to me. I have a choice about it. So I highly recommend those two books, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, as a way of starting to consider maybe your life is down to you, nobody else, not your circumstances, not what's going on, not what's happening, not anything else, your choice. So this might sound incredibly easy to say, given my position of privilege in probably the 10% of the world where, or even less, where I'm using the internet, I have a computer, I have a home, I have a job, I get to have these kind of esoteric, deep conversations about self-awareness and responsibility and resilience, all of those things. And that's true. I do not doubt for a second that I am in a position of privilege with money on the planet. However, regardless of the circumstances, I do believe that everybody has a choice about how they respond to their circumstances. And I've had so many discussions with different people, especially my family, about this idea. What do you mean you have a choice? Well, maybe I do. It's not the truth. I think it's a really useful way, an empowering way of looking at life. Because, and I'll give a few examples now. If my life was a mess and it was because of, oh, I couldn't get a job because I'm brown, or I don't have enough money, or where I live, or my upbringing, or my school, or whatever specific thing I choose to say it's because of. If my life is because of those circumstances, then I have no choice. I can't do anything. In effect, I'm giving away all my power to those circumstances. So I'll flip it on its head a little bit, or give you another way of looking at it. If my life is a mess and it's horrible and it's down to me, that's a good thing, because if my life is a mess and it's down to me, it means I can do something about it. I have a choice about what action I take that can alter my circumstances. Or I have a choice about how I view my circumstances so that I can actually embrace what's happening. That is what I mean by responsibility. That's another way that I invite you to consider what responsibility is, separate from what we often hear when we think about responsibility: burden, I should, ought to, have to. Maybe not. Instead of saying I have to, maybe you could say I choose to. So responsibility, the ability to choose our response to the circumstances whatever is happening. And that's that example of blaming whatever the circumstances are gives away our power. Think about a situation you're dealing with. If you're trying to lose weight and you're saying, I just can't stop eating chocolate, there's no power for you in that situation. Maybe you're choosing to eat chocolate. I'm talking about this because it's something that I was dealing with. I ate loads of chocolate over Easter, and I haven't eaten any for 2 days. Each day without chocolate is a tick, and I can keep going with that. It's my choice whether I eat chocolate or not. So, or if you're committed to being in a relationship, then how I view women, or if I'm a woman, how you view men is your choice. You have a choice about how you view men. And if you view men a particular way, then guess what? Men are going to show up that way. Or if I'm a guy and I'm asking out women and it's not working, or they keep saying to me, you're really nice, but I'd only like to be friends with you, that's incredibly frustrating. But if I say, oh, that's just how I am, or that's how women are, I'm giving away all my ability to do anything, to choose anything in the situation. If I'm asking out women and they keep saying, I'm really nice, but we can only be friends, then what action can I take that's different? If I choose to be responsible and choose to see my life as down to me, then I have a choice over what action I take. So that's what I'm inviting you to consider. Your life is down to you. You have a choice, and you're free in a way. You are responsible. Things happen. We have our self-awareness, and then we have our actions. What am I going to choose to do with my self-awareness, with my choices, with what I say? So that's responsibility. And consider buying those 2 books and giving them a read. Book 1, Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and book 2, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Thank you for listening and engaging with this episode of Self-Awareness is Your Secret Weapon. If you like what you've heard and you'd like to spend a bit more time thinking and taking action on the ideas and maybe slowing it down, then consider joining my email list. If you go to the URL in the corner, you should be able to see it there, selfawareness.jamesdesouza.com/secret weapon. That's self-awareness, all spelled out, .jamesdesouza, JamesDesouza.com/secret weapon, again, all spelled out. Then put your name and email address there, and you'll get some more information from me about thinking and applying these ideas in your life so that you can make the most of the world of self-development, one idea at a time, and take action in your own life.